So this is a story about how I got into this whole drifting thing. Now, it started about 7 to 8 years ago, and obviously as a kid growing up in the early 2000s, I was into Fast and the Furious, which led me to being really into Need for Speed Underground, which led me into being into Initial D, and that's sort of where I got my first exposure to being obsessed about drifting and modifying very basic Japanese cars, A86, Sylvia, RX-7, FC, FD. So naturally this sort of spiraled into, hey, maybe I should get my own project car. And I was scouring the forums and just doing as much research as I can. Basically the requirement was to go drifting, manual, rear-wheel drive, get a good diff, seat, coilovers. That's pretty much it. And there was tons of aftermarket support for the Japanese cars in particular, because they were sort of specifically the ones that people would buy to go drifting. So a few months of that just went on, and I kept going to the arcade with my friends and playing Initial D until one day I was on my way to school, and right down the street from my house there was a certain black car for sale right on the street with a for sale sign. And it just so happens that it was an FC RX-7 Turbo 2. So I made a call, and then pretty much a week later the car was in my driveway with a couple of very confused parents. But, you know, they let me do my thing. Since I had an RX-7, naturally I gravitated towards the forums to know and learn as much as I can to sort of, you know, start doing some basic wrenching and maintenance work, etc. Until I stumbled upon a couple of famous forums. One obviously being RX-7 Club, the next one being Ziptied. And Ziptied is pretty much where I taught myself the history of American drifting in particular, because of the fact that a lot of the premier grassroots guys that sort of got it starting here in this country, it was those people who posted mainly on Ziptied. So you had teams like Pink Godzira with the R. You had teams like Risky Devil, among other people, you know, based out of California, that sort of, you know, got this whole party started for us. I'm talking around mid 2000s, and a lot of kids nowadays, I'm assuming they probably wouldn't know who they are, which is a crying shame. Somebody should do some sort of a tribute. One of the team members' name was Lindsay, and his car was a bright Ferrari Rosso Corsa Red FC RX-7, fully kitted with VSKFs, which eventually swapped out, but he had a full BN Sports body kit. Everything was authentic, by the way, which back then it must have costed an arm and a leg, which goes to show how committed these people were to their cars and the whole culture. Tons of videos and pictures online of them drifting on various tracks around in California. And eventually I stumbled upon another team called Risky Devil. These guys are based out of Chicago. Man, they did a phenomenal job in terms of having a good online presence that was very influential. They made music videos. They had tons of like photos and photo shoots that they did for their cars in various magazines like Import Tuner, Super Straighter, whoever I'm missing. And these guys drove their cars on the street, and these cars were slammed down to the ground. Amazing wheels, great body kits. Paintwork was pristine, by the way, which was a rarity in the US around that time for drift cars. And I was just, my jaw just dropped. You know, everything that I watched in terms of option videos based out of Japan and these famous drifters and their immaculate machines, I never thought I would find that here in America, because after going to my first drift event, it was just a bunch of almost junkyard cars just going sideways with panels missing and paint. You can forget about having a good looking car, you know. But these guys are doing it. These guys are based out of, again, Chicago, and they were really driving their cars very well on the street, and they had a group of guys that would just get together and just street drive. So there was a whole community based around that, and based upon the initial Japanese culture of, you know, having internal rivalry within a team to sort of make each other better, and then you exchange information and sort of help each other out as you go along. And they're doing that, and they're doing that extremely well. And their cars were just so beautiful to look at. Dave's FC, it was a full sexy styled kitted RX-7, some AVS Model 5s among other wheels that he might have had, foresight wing, BMW paint, sexy style hood, Gretty turbos, everything was perfectly done. LA's FC, among all the iterations that it had, the black version that ended up in upside down, red version that eventually had the origin kit and the re-amemiya wing. Eventually he painted it yellow, got rid of the wing, got bigger wheels, SSR Aguilas Trusa, I believe. And it was just, oh man, these guys were just like doing everything right, and I wanted to be there all the time because I'm from Jersey, I grew up here, I was born here. And the drifting scene, we probably have one of the best tracks in the US, which is Englishtown Raceway Park. Not the best looking cars unfortunately. But things started to change around that time for me and my perspective on how drifting should be, just because of the fact that I knew it was possible to have these people who paid tribute or paid homage to the guys in Japan that sort of started it for everybody and sort of kept the style alive, because that's all drifting was about, just looking cool, you know. But I think the American mindset was, I just want to get to Formula D and be a champion, and that's all I care about. So I'm gonna show off my fabrication work and my giant turbo, and which is fine. But if you're just doing it to enjoy it, then you should do it to enjoy it and inspire other kids. And having a beaten down car is not really inspiring at all. Just watching a car go sideways without any style is sort of perpetuating the thought that, hey, maybe you should just act like a douchebag in your car, and that's cool. Then it leads to, you know, burnouts in parking lots and people doing dumb shit in their cars on the streets, and that's not what it's about, at least in my opinion. You know, drifting is beautiful because everybody has their own interpretation of it and what their car should look like, which ends up being like a physical personification of their own character, and that's what I love. But if your character sucks, I guess your car is gonna suck. One guy, I think named Omar from the Risky Devil, had an FC lower with R Magic, you know, side skirt and rear bumper, front lip on R33 wheels, and that to me was super cool because it was a very simple wheel, but on that car somehow it just worked, which led me to importing my own set of R33s and my own set of Stance coilovers, which I run on my car to this day. When it comes to the whole Risky Devil guys, the core team is still there. Some of them split up, named themselves Junk House. There's a really cool Tumblr website that they had that I followed, then eventually transformed into Team Proceed, which is pretty much the team that's the masterminds behind Final Bout, which is the premier stylish drifting event or events that's held throughout the US now, and it has special appearances from Tomoyo Suzuki and the Sexy Knights themselves. So it's actually pretty cool to see how much grassroots has evolved over the years and what role these guys play, because they're still very much passionate about it and driving their asses off, and I love it. But yeah, back to how I got my start. I just bought the car. I bought the car that was down the street from my house. I eventually bought Ilya's wing, which is on my car to this day. So I guess I'm a bit of a collector, or paying homage to the guys that came before me. And I just want to stay true to whatever inspired me from the beginning without getting too stressed out over money, because money, when it comes to drifting, is a big issue. Obviously, having any project car is not cheap, but trying to do it at such a young age and have so much fun as much as you can, eventually it makes sense to make a compromise. And by compromise, I mean, you know, get a V8 or just get something that's more reliable, like a newer car, like a Ford Mustang or something like that, to sort of keep driving and keep having fun with your car, rather than just building it for years and years and you drive it twice and then something breaks and all of your motivation just evaporates. So I understand that side of things, which leads to majority of the grassroots drivers and drifters being mechanic guys or body shop guys or people that were in the auto industry. So it sort of makes it easier for them to transition to building a project car and drifting it regularly, versus guys like me who are just finance nerds and just saw this as a hobby and wanted to do this, you know, in passing and build a good car and build a car that looks cool. I wound up spending more money than I should have buying the things that probably didn't matter, which is like a full rebuild and, you know, standalone ECU and things like that, rather than just keep things simple and stock and just go drive. So that's pretty much why I like to make these videos, because of the fact that it's very easy to get caught up in buying parts and just building your car, and next thing you know, 3 or 4 years pass by, and then by then life takes over and you become an adult and can't really afford it anymore. You have to sell things off. And I've seen it happen multiple times where people are just parting out their cars on forums or whatever websites or marketplaces online. It's kind of sad to see. I want to see people see it through. I want to see people commit to their builds, sort of like I have. I've pondered selling my car multiple times over the course of the last 8 years, but I never found the heart to, and it just didn't make sense financially because I put too much into it. Might as well build it up towards bulletproof and just enjoy the shit out of it, which is what I intend to do. So that's to today, where I have a visit with a body shop tomorrow, and they're gonna take care of some of the body work. I'm gonna paint my fenders from basic primer gray to black and make everything even, and eventually I'll source enough body parts together where I can get a full paint job done. But until then, I'm just gonna drive my car, and I hope you do too.
Rolls Royce, baby, in hidden hills. Bags full of $100 bills. Jogging past your wife and she get chill. All because of how I kept it real. Life sweet, baby, on a G-Way. I get you anything you need, baby. Work for everything you see, baby. Ooh, wee, baby.